I've seen a lot of people reach that 9-figure, 8-figure goal who, once they've gotten that financial number that they thought was their level of success, feel empty when they got it. And the reason why they felt empty when they got it is they didn't.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the True Life Network podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ashabi, and today's guest is the founder of Hillenbrand Media, which promotes entrepreneurs, business owners, and media personalities through film social media segments and on-camera interviews. She has hosted and produced multiple nationwide segments for the ION channel, providing viewers with insights and happenings in their city, while simultaneously giving brands exposure to viewers across the country. She's been recently featured on the cover of Formidable Women's Magazine and is the host of her own podcast, On Air with Molly Dare. Ladies and gentlemen, today I bring to you the one and only Molly Dare. Molly, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's my pleasure. So Molly, before we jump into the insights on what allowed you to become who you are today, but I want to understand a little bit more in regards to your history. What allowed you to pursue the career that you have today?
Ooh, it's a good question and a long answer, so I'll try to.
Well, hit me. We got time.
I started out my career down on Wall Street at Goldman Sachs. I graduated college. I got the dream job that you're supposed to get with a great paycheck and bragging rights for a swanky address in New York City. And I realized
you had a penthouse?
Not quite penthouse level yet. I started out, at a lower level. But I was in a cubicle and I was working for the bigger machine. And I realized real quick, this isn't as fun as I thought it was going to be. And I saw a lot of people doing really, really well, making a lot of money, who were miserable because they weren't pursuing their passions. They were literally showing up at work, putting in the 20-hour days and doing it kind of like a cog in a wheel of someone else's dream. And I realized real quick, I don't think this is what I want. I don't want to end up like that. I'd love to be successful. I'd love to have the money, but not by doing someone else's dream. I want to do it by having my own. And so I quit that job with nothing that I was going to, much to many people's shock. That next week, 9/11 happened. And the guy that I was dating at the time also worked down on Wall Street. And, it was just, I think we all kind of had a moment in our life where we were like, life is short. We don't know if tomorrow is guaranteed. We better start doing what we're passionate about, what feels good to us, like today, right now, because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And so I really put a lot of thought into what makes me happy, what makes me tick, what are my talents that I could use and help kind of pursue a life of passion. So my brother at the time, we're both really big fans of singer-songwriters, acoustic singers, and he had always wanted to start a record label. We were in New York City, and we're like, let's do this. And so we started a record label in New York City. We promoted singer-songwriters. I absolutely loved the marketing, the promoting, bringing the singer-songwriters in some of the biggest venues in New York City, getting them booked, that kind of high that you get when you get like the yes. Just absolutely fell in love with it. Singer-songwriters are notoriously shy. They're not the best promoters. They like to be in the studios, writing their songs and not promoting themselves. So it was a perfect kind of scenario. Cut to me marrying that guy I was dating during 9/11, having 2 kids. I realized being a mom, as much as I loved being a mom and adored my 2 kids, that I still wanted to pursue something. I wanted to do something outside the home. I'm a better person when I am using all of my brain. And so I needed to still...
Isn't it everybody?
Yes, that's a good point. I needed the creative part. I needed the conversation, the adult conversation, that kind of, stimulant. And so I kind of looked in the area to see what was needed or what wasn't around. And I think that's what we as entrepreneurs are always looking for. What can I provide that's not already there? Where do I see an emptiness? And so at the time, being a mom, I loved children's clothing. There wasn't a lot of children's clothing in the area we lived. I said, okay, this is what I know how to do. This is what I can do. So I started calling up designers and asking them if I could get their brands. I would bring them into my home and kind of have like a trunk show in my home. But it soon took over my living room, dining room, my office, and my husband at the time
How's
was
your
like,
husband feeling about
this
that?
is great, but maybe somewhere else and not in our home. And so I found a little store in town, and they said yes after a few negotiations. And that's what started kind of my journey into retail. So I started that store. I then opened into a bigger store because I had some success. And then I got divorced. So a lot of us entrepreneurs, we have many pivots in our life.
Definitely, you can say that again.
A lot of things that are like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And so I was going through a divorce. I said, okay, this is what I know how to do. I know how to run a retail store. I know how to do PR. I know how to market it. But now I'm going to be living on a lot less income than I was used to. And what should I do now? And so my immediate thought was, I need to make it bigger. I need to bring in more money. I need to bring in more customers. So where am I going to do that? Okay, I need to go into a city. New York City, which would have been the obvious choice because I was in Princeton, New Jersey at the time, already.
Right by me. I was actually in Saddle River.
Oh, too bad we didn't know each other then. You could have helped me out.
There you go. Well, I wasn't,
well, you were young then.
I was probably maybe like 12.
Let's not discuss the age difference. You probably could have shopped in my children's store.
Still probably like 27.
Yeah,
Don't worry,
exactly.
guys.
Forever 27. That's my new retail store. So New York City already had the designers I was carrying, but the city that didn't was Chicago. Okay. There was a local airport down the road from me where I lived that had one flight a day to Chicago. I checked out Chicago. There were none of the designers there I was carrying, and I said, that's where my new store is going to be. So I went to New York, to Chicago, and Michigan Ave is a hot address, but also Oak Street, which is all the designers are, and I said, that's where I need to be, right in the middle of all the designers, my little store that could, because there was very high volume of traffic. I went into the stores and I asked, what was their volume of purchases every day, and I liked the number they gave me, and I said, okay.
What was that number?
It was very high. The rent there was about $40,000. I negotiated them down to $30,000 a month. So if that gives you any idea of...
That was a hot spot.
It was a hot spot. So I got a loan from the bank. I opened up my second retail store in Chicago, and things were going really, really well. So going through the divorce, I had my kids, and now I'm a single mom with 2 girls, and I'm now managing 2 stores in 2 different cities. And I thought this was a really great moment for me as a woman, as a mom, to show my 2 young girls what it takes to be an entrepreneur, how to handle life when it doesn't go your way, when you get knocked down, when it's not exactly the paved road that you liked it or wanted it to be. And so but don't get me wrong, I had a pity party for myself for a little while.
I mean, I feel like everybody does, right? I mean, at the end of the day, a heartbreak's a heartbreak.
Absolutely.
Everybody has emotions.
And you're allowed to feel them, and I did. But then, I feel very lucky that I had 2 young girls looking at me, because it kind of gave me the oomph I needed to get dressed in the morning, to show up, and to show them again, what it takes to rebuild. And I didn't want to let them down, because it wasn't about me anymore. My life up until you get this, it's no longer about me. Selfish Molly was gone. And it's now about these 2 little eyes looking at me and being like, now what, Mom? So I brought them into the whole process, which is really, really fun. They helped me design the store. There were posters of them all over the stores, and canvases. They watched me deal with, the bank and get the loans. They watched me literally build this retail store from the ground up. And they said, we called it our store because it was. And so they would come out with me to Chicago. We would fly back and forth. They would work behind the cash register. They would stay with me till midnight doing inventory.
Literally a family-owned business.
Yes.
Okay.
And I really wanted them to see they were only 4 and 6, so it's not like they were loving every minute of it. Except for
they're probably like, Mom, I want to go hang out with Bobby and Susie down the street.
Like, can we go to the American Girl store or something? But they loved being behind the cash register, because that's always fun. Who doesn't love making money? Even at a young age, that feels good. But the inventory until midnight, not so fun. But what I'm hoping is down the road that imparts them the lessons of what it takes. I hope that they are running their own businesses down the road and not working for someone else. But if they choose that, that's fine too. So cut to, again, and I'll get to where I am now. We were in the final stages of our divorce. I was under the impression I was going to be able to move to Chicago. That's what the lawyers were working on, what that would look like. And in the 11th hour, I got a message from the lawyer saying you are no longer allowed to live in Chicago. The only place your ex-husband is allowing you to move to is Florida.
Is that even legal?
And,
That's legal?
During the negotiation process, you could do whatever you want. And then you can go to trial, or you can have a court, situation if you want to fight
Scratch this off tape. No, don't let anybody hear my wife. Don't let my wife hear this.
But it became clear that Florida, which is, by the way, is nowhere near Chicago or Princeton, New Jersey, where my 2 stores was the one on the table, where I knew not a soul. I didn't know one person in South Florida. And I'm like, that's nowhere near my stores. Like, how am I supposed to run these 2 stores? And my only option was to fight it and put my kids through a court case, which I wasn't going to do. I feel like they had been through enough. And so I closed my stores within 4 weeks, sold my home, and we moved to South Florida, where I didn't know a soul. And we started all over again. And I didn't know when I moved down here what I was going to do, if I was going to open up another retail store. But again, just like I did with the retail, I looked at where there was a hole or where there was something I could offer that wasn't already here. And so a friend came down, and it's always good to have, I'm sure you have many friends like this, who tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear.
That's why I don't have friends. I have friends, don't worry, guys. I didn't mean to call you out.
And I had a friend who came down after a few months of me being here and playing victim. To be quite honest, I was not my best self during this time. Was really struggling. And she took me out to lunch, and she's like, Molly, you're playing victim, and you're not reaching your potential. And she took out a napkin, and she wrote out my name, Hillenbrand. And she goes, it's right in your name, brand. You love marketing and promoting people and brands. That should be your company. That should be what you do. It's what you love to do anyway. I'm like, oh my God, you're a genius. It's already in my name. Why didn't I think of that? So that's what started Hillenbrand Media back in 2017. And it originally started as a company helping small businesses, passion projects get on social media, because Instagram was just becoming a big deal. Facebook business pages were coming out, and I was helping people get started on there. And a local TV station down here, Ion Channels, Ion South Florida, came to me and they said, we want to be bigger and better. And, as I was saying to you before, I only see things in world domination. That's the only level I go to in any project that I'm on. I'm like, we need to be everywhere. New York, Chicago, LA.
Omnipresence.
Yes, Dubai. I want to be everywhere. They said, great, go do that. And so I was kind of taken aback, because you could never have paid me to get in front of a camera. Doing this, never before 2017. I've never produced. I've never done, all the skills needed. But they saw something in me. And there was a really big mindset shift I had in that moment, where I would always tell myself, well, I don't know how to do that, so that's not for me. And I changed it to, well, I don't know how to do that, to I don't know how to do that yet. And that one word that I added at the end of that sentence has changed my life going forward since then. Because every opportunity that has come my way, instead of being, oh, no, that's not for me, I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do that yet, but I'll bet you I can learn that. And so my life since 2017 has been amazing, because opportunities come and I don't shy away from them. I embrace them. I love feeling that kind of fear of being outside my comfort zone, of my comfort box. And I've embraced fear. It's why I wear my little cuff all the time with fearless on it, because I'm never fearless. I'm never without fear. But I've learned to fear less and to embrace fear and to make it work to my advantage and make it more of an excitement than fear.
Well, you know what they say about fear, right? It's fear evidence appearing real.
I love that.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just something that you are perceiving to be real, but at the end of the day, you won't know until you actually experience it.
I love that. That's great. That's right up my alley. So I went and started Ion New York, Ion Chicago, Ion LA. I got Jeremy Piven, who was my first interview in Ion Chicago, which really launched it in big. And I was able to get these names that really helped. But what I loved was not just featuring them in the moment they're in now and the great success, but when the cameras were being put away and the crew was packing up, I was able to sit with them just like you and I right now. And I was like, so tell me the real story. Like, what did you really get through to go here?
Well, I hope you're bringing the real story here.
Oh, yeah, I'll bring all the real stories.
Just want to make sure. for our viewers here.
Yes. And he told me just like these, the one trait I see, and I'm sure you see this as well, with the really amazing, successful entrepreneurs that you have, that you interview, they've all been through shit. They've all been through really heavy stuff. And that kind of gives them that like strength, that fire, that grit that's needed to be a successful entrepreneur. I'm like, why are we not capturing that? That is what people want to see. That's what inspires them. That's what motivates them. That's what inspires and motivates me, not just the success. I mean, that's fun to see, of course, like the successful stuff, the planes, the boats, all the things. But really, for me to be motivated to get to that level, I want to hear that they went through or they struggled with what I'm struggling, or that they tackled something, or they were thrown rocks at them and they persevered, and this is how they did it. And so that's what launched the series that I'm filming now, which is the Spotlight series, where I get entrepreneurs, celebrities, public figures, and I share their journey to get where they are today and the mindset behind it. Because with the reality shows and everything of the past decade, I think we're kind of in
Covering
need.
up the emotion side.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think we're just in need of a little bit deeper.
Definitely.
Especially after these 2 years with the pandemic. And I think people are just not as impressed by the material as they are of the mindset and how they got it.
I mean, I disagree with that.
Go ahead.
I mean, look at all the millennials, right? They're still fascinated by all the material, planes, yachts, things like that. You know what I think it is? At the end of the day, and this is something that I talk to everybody about. At the end of the day, the reason why people who have made it have gone through the worst shit in their lives is because at the end of the day, they know the other side, right? It's kind of like the yin and yang. And when I talk about somebody, with somebody, what is your why? There has to be a pain point attached to it, right? Because if there's no pain point attached to a why, at the end of the day, it's just a goal with no substance, right? You're going to be pushing to achieve that. That shit will die right out. You know, when you have that pain point attached to the reason why you're doing what you're doing, it's going to pull you into action to stay intentional, to do everything possible to get, to where you want to be. And it's really, that awareness of what the other side of that reality is, right? To me personally, I don't know how much you know about my story. I've been to a point in my life where I wanted to commit suicide. And being at that point in my life, I understand emotions. I understand what people go through. I think it opens up a level of emotional intelligence, right? Because you really can resonate with situations and different scenarios that people are going through, and it allows you to open up a conversation where it's in-depth, meaningful, and can lead that person into a different perspective, right? So that's actually something I want to touch upon with you. Do you think that the divorce actually enhanced your ability to relate with individuals?
100%. I would say it was two big pivotal moments in my life. One, obviously the divorce. There's no way you go through that and don't come out a changed person, for the better, for the worse, depending. But
perspective.
Yes, but you get a different perspective on life. It's kind of, for me, one of the first times I really got punched down in a big way. I've had a few others, but that was really a tough moment for me. I grew up in a town where everything's perfect. I grew up in a family where I was the first one to be divorced out of everyone in my family. And so it was a reality of, I'm not this perfect person that I pretended to be. And it was me telling myself, you're very flawed. And
elaborate on that.
Coming to terms with that. I wasn't a perfect partner, and he wasn't a perfect partner. And I truly believe that in any relationship that falls apart, it takes two. It's not one person's fault over the other.
Do you think that ultimately when it comes to relationships, it's people who are not living up to their perspective of who they are, and that's the reason why things fall apart?
I do. I also think a lot of people put the blame on the other person as to why they're not fulfilling their own hopes and dreams for themselves. I think a lot of people have a much harder time accepting their own role in that, and I feel that human nature, we tend to blame others for our own misgivings, shortcomings.
Victim mentality.
Yes, victim mentality, big time. And I think both of us, if he was here today, he would say that we both equally played a part in it.
Do you guys have a relationship still today?
We have a great relationship today. I mean, we've been divorced 10 years, so it's kind of water under the bridge. But, we got married very young. I was 23, when I got engaged, and a baby. And we just grew apart. It wasn't, I didn't understand. He was an entrepreneur and he was gone 3 weeks out of the month, and I was a new mom and I wanted him around. And I don't think we understood where each of us were on our journeys at the time, and our journeys weren't aligned.
Was he older?
1 year older.
Okay.
Does that count?
That's not that much of a difference.
But again, it really came down to we were just too young. We didn't know who we were yet. And some people grow amazingly together, and some people grew apart, and we just grew apart. But we still support each other greatly today. As I said, it wasn't going through that divorce and what happened and where I ended up those were not good years for us at all.
So do you think that ultimately the situation that you guys were in beforehand allowed you to find who you truly were and your gifts?
100%, because nothing was asked of me before then. I had an easy road.
Was he mainly the supporter in the relationship?
Yes.
Okay.
And I contributed for sure, but not to his level. He was very, very successful, and because it wasn't asked of me to bring out these other talents and that grit, I didn't have it. But I almost felt like a phoenix rising from the ashes when I went through the divorce and I started this new store and I went to the bank and I did it all myself. And that was when I first realized how capable I truly was. And that's a really incredible thing. How many times in your life do you get a chance to start all over again? Not many.
Yep.
And so I'm not a proponent of divorce, but there's a silver lining of a very, very dark cloud, and that is you get a chance to reinvent yourself. I've been able to do it a few times because I've had to move all over the place depending on my circumstances and restart again. But so many who are just going through this pandemic right now are having kind of that moment where they've had to pivot in a major way, their companies and businesses. And we're all starting all over again, kind of. We're rethinking how we're running our businesses, who we're having in our lives, what relationships we still want in our lives. I think if you didn't take advantage of that time where we got to sit at home and be with our families and be with our thoughts, and you didn't come out a better person, you missed the boat.
Definitely. Well, there's something important that you said just a few minutes ago, that ultimately, when you went through everything, you had to basically show your kids, right? Like who you truly could be. And I think that's a huge component, especially with women entrepreneurs, to show their kids everything that they can be and show them what it takes to really utilize their full potential, right? I'm curious to understand, what was that triggering point that, besides the divorce, right? What was that thing that really made you see the perspective of okay, I have these kids looking up to me. I want to show them that they can create the wealth, the happiness, and everything that they ever want in life. And ultimately, not only just say that and think it, but take action on it.
I think, when I was growing up, there was not a lot of females in founder CEO positions. We didn't have, the closest thing I could think of it was like Wonder Woman, right? It was like the epitome of like a strong woman, like a badass.
Which you got your cape on today.
Listen, I got my cape and my cuffs ready to fight off whatever. Maybe that's why. But I just, when you have your children, and any parent relates to this, you want the world for them. You're going to be the most badass person ever. And my job is to show you how. We think that we have children and we're here to teach them everything, but honestly, they teach us just as much, if not more, as well. And
I'm only 3 months in, so yesterday was his 3-month birthday. So I'm only 3 months in. I don't have the experience that you have under your belt yet, but I can tell you, I could see some correlation with what you're saying.
Absolutely. And it's a wonderful, amazing journey, because you see pieces of you'll see over the next few years, pieces of you and mannerisms and personality traits that are both great and not great that you possess. And you're like, man, there's that mirror. Nice to meet you, Molly. And again, because it's 2 girls that I had, I was like, okay, I can't let them fall apart. I can't fall apart. I don't want them to feel that we are any less whole, because there's no missing part. We're still whole, just the 3 of us. And I wanted so bad for them to feel that way, because I feel like I ripped away the fairy tale life that not only they thought they had, but they deserved. And that weighed heavily on me, that level of guilt of, I just took that fairy tale away from them. But how could I still make it a fairy tale life?
I was going to say, just because you went through a divorce doesn't mean it can't be a fairy tale for them.
Correct. And so that's what I wanted to show them. Now, my fairy tale is different. It's a book that, and I actually did write a children's book.
Okay. What's the name of it?
Called Luxaby Lily.
All right. So if you guys want the link to it, DM me.
And back then, so I did write this book about, I won't go into it, but it was really, really important to me that I rewrite the script on what a fairy tale looks like in 2000, and when was this, 15 or 14? I can't remember. It was way back then. And so I think that's what really motivated me, is like letting them know that a woman is whole with or without a man. Definitely. Now, a man comes and adds, tremendous value and all of that, but it doesn't make you any less or more whole to have a partner. Hopefully you just add on to each other. You raise each other up to another
100%.
level for sure. When you have that power couple, that you and I were discussing, like that is like a winning scenario. And I think of all the relationships that I look at and that I desire for myself to have hopefully one day, is of a power couple where it's not the woman behind the man, it's the woman beside the man.
Definitely.
And I think when you find that, it only helps both sides. It only makes both of you reach up to your next level, because you don't want to disappoint the other person. You want to be like, look at what I'm doing. And you want him to be like, look at what I'm doing.
You guys want to check each other.
For sure. I want to impress him.
Make sure you're both leveling up.
And I want him to want to impress me. Mm-hmm. And when you have that extra,
right there, what you just said, I think that's a huge component of it, because at the end of the day, I think that ultimately, once people get to a certain point in a relationship, they stop trying to impress each other. And I think that's ultimately where the fire kind of dies out, because they're just like, oh, you know what? I got you. You're locked in, right? And I think that ultimately you guys have to constantly be doing everything possible to stay intrigued, keep that fire going, because if you don't have that fire, what else is there? It's just cohabitating, right?
100%. And it's why I'm so passionate about women being financially independent and having their own passion and pursuing it, because there's nothing that lights somebody up more than pursuing their own passion. And who doesn't want to be with a partner who's lit up?
Definitely.
I don't want to be with a partner whose light went out. That's for sure. That's not exciting for me.
You were hot shit like 10 years ago.
Yes.
Now it's like, where are you at today?
Like, I'm always striving for, like, what is my next thing? Like, I think that's what makes me exciting and what makes someone attracted to me. But I think it's also important that my partner have enough confidence and in themselves that they're okay with me going out there doing my own thing, because that's a whole other topic. But again,
oof. Yeah. You just brought up
all right, if you want to go there, we can go there.
All right, so being a woman in the entrepreneurship space, let me ask you this. How is it engaging with males? Because I know that there could be, a fine line between, professional and personal, where, I've seen a lot of women, they kind of try to leverage that, like, women power, where they're like, okay, you know what? I know what you want, but I'm going to utilize and leverage that to get what I want.
Yeah.
Do you think that's ethical, or I just want to pick your brain on that, on that portion of it, the men and women dynamic as a women entrepreneur.
And it's a fair question. I've worked with a lot of men in my life. I like my role now where I work for myself. I'm the head honcho there, but of my company. But I've worked with amazing men. I have to say that I've loved some of the men I've worked with, and I've really not loved some of the men I've worked with. I would say it's about 50-50. And I would say in my relationships, in my business relationships with men that worked well, I was really upfront with them when I thought that something was out of line, if I thought they were acting out of line. And I didn't do it in like an admonishing way or like anything, but I would kind of like joke back and tell them that like, that might be crossing the line a little bit. And I think it's really, really important to have that open dialogue and to be able to say it in like a funny, jovial manner where no one feels admonished or like, oh, she's no fun. You know what I mean? Like, where it's used against me. I feel that I've been lucky that I've been able to always be part of the boys' club. Like, I've never felt, and maybe I didn't, but I always felt like I was welcomed there. Because I don't see it I've never seen it as a gender thing. I've always felt like I belonged there.
I've seen this over and over again. Obviously I'm training businesses. I'm working with women entrepreneurs as well. I feel that some of them, they don't have that value system in them. And ultimately they're just like, whatever gets the deal done, do it, right? And I think that we need to shed light on ultimately what's ethical and, right. Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be gender versus gender, right? Mm-mm. It should be we're all equal and we're all here to fulfill a purpose. But, like, don't come at me with that, what I would call bullshit. I think that there has to be a certain line of respect. And I think that, especially nowadays in business, there's not that line of respect where most people are, that most people are just crossing it.
I can tell you, I still walk into a room at times, and if there's a man with me, they will defer to the man first for the questions instead of being like, no, it's my business. It's actually my business. Like, look over here.
You know what's funny? I actually feel that with me and my wife. They go to her first before it's me, and I'm just like, it's my business. And you can ask her. I'll give you. I'll put you in contact with her. Ask her.
I love that, but I also think it's how you enter the room as well.
Definitely.
And so most of the time when I enter, it's confident, and I'm very well aware of what I bring to the table. And not that I haven't had to work twice as hard sometimes to prove what I bring to the table, but regardless of how I have to prove it, I am very confident that I bring value. And so I think once that's seen, whether it's a man or a woman, I think sometimes women have a tough time with women bosses.
Definitely.
I mean, listen.
I feel like women and women butt heads.
Listen, it works both ways. It does. I've seen it both ways, where there's jealousy.
Well, I think with women and women, I think the reason why, just in my opinion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like when there's a woman and woman trying to give out different perspectives, they start to butt heads because they want that dominance factor. They don't want to feel like, okay, like, hey, I've already had men control me before, and now I want that control. So when women and women, like two strong women, come together, they're just like, no, I'm the dominant one. I'm the dominant one.
What I think I would say to any woman in that situation is the women that I see that struggle with that, they're a little insecure about what they do, the value that they bring. And I'm telling you, just do your job, bring the value that you have to the table, and work like a machine. And you earn the respect of not only your coworkers, but the people above you, below you, beside you. I mean, I have such respect for every single person at every single level of any single company. A company cannot run, and I thank my father for teaching me this. He ran a very successful business, and he brought me along with him all the time. I learned so much about running a business through him. And he would walk in the door, and he would greet the guard at the door by his name. He would go in the cafeteria, ask the cafeteria lady how her two daughters were, name them by name. Do you mean he made every single person in that company feel valued and an asset to that company? Because the company would not run with that security guard or the cafeteria lady or the receptionist or anywhere up all along the company. And I just think it's so important in general, no matter where you are in the pipeline, that you treat everyone in that company with respect, and that's how you gain respect back.
100%. I mean, throughout your journey, I'm sure you've dealt with it where you've had kind of that insecurity because of, where other women are within the company and stuff. Mm-hmm. How did you overcome that portion to kind of just think, okay, you know what, it's respect towards respect, and be able to overcome, like, okay, it's not about the position and whatnot, it's more about the value that we bring to the table? I
think it's the whole collaboration over competition mindset. I've been
collaboration over competition mindset.
You're gonna push back on this one. I already feel it.
I'm gonna push back.
Yeah.
Okay, hit me with it.
Okay. Maybe not. No, I'm a big fan of, instead of seeing other men or women in my field doing what I do, I'm always thinking, how can I collaborate with that person? How can I get their audience to see what I'm doing and my audience to see what this person's doing? To me, there's room for all of us. There is no other Mike Ashabi. There is no other Molly Dare. There is no other, we could name so many amazing people out there doing the damn thing right now. And whoever your audience is, they may relate to some parts of what I'm doing and love it. And whoever my audience is, who's going to be seeing you now, be like, oh my God, that's so cool. I want to see what he's doing too. There's room for all of us at the table because each of us have our own unique talents and abilities that set us apart. As I said, there's no other Mike Ashabi. And so I think that when you find what sets you apart, you got to go all in on that. You got to stop being like everybody else. We put all these people on pedestals, and I'm not saying some aren't worth it, because there's a lot of people that I admire, don't get me wrong, but I don't want to be just like them.
I want to be your own version
100%.
of you.
I want to be inspired by them. I want to be motivated by them. I want to see parts of them. I'm like, oh, I could see
Which
how I
you
could
can give credit to that person saying, hey, you know what, you inspired me here. I agree with that. So let me ask you this. Who were some people that you looked up to where you were just like, you know what, they're doing it, I'm not doing it yet, but you know what? Because of them, they inspired me to go ahead and go all in on my gifts.
That's a good question. I mean, to be honest, there's not a lot of women, CEOs, founders in media, but I'll tell you someone who I greatly admire, who I just think is everything I want to be in my own way, is May Musk, Elon Musk's mom.
Okay.
I got the opportunity to work with her on a project and speak with her, and I read her book, A Woman Makes a Plan, and she is, to me, the OG entrepreneur. She was a single mom raising 3 kids. Now, we hear a lot about Elon, but she's got 2 other amazing kids who are
This
entrepreneurs.
is the first time anybody in conversation has brought up his mom to me. So, you
Really?
know what? Kudos to you for that, because I'm intrigued now.
Look where Elon got it from, okay? So May Musk is Elon's mom, as I said. And she's the OG entrepreneur. She started a business in nutrition before nutrition was a thing, okay, decades ago. Single mom, got out of a horrible marriage, raised 3 kids who are very successful entrepreneurs. Obviously, Elon, one of them, but 2 other in their own right. One runs a media company, and the other one has a farm-to-table business. 3 very different fields. Very successful. And then you have this mom who was, raising them all while working and doing the damn thing. And her whole entire book is A Woman Makes a Plan. Life threw her many, many, many detours and pivots. And she didn't skip a beat. She figured it out. She's like, okay, what are we going to do now? And she figured it out. And that's why her kids are the same way. Like, we got to figure this out. And, when I spoke to her, this was a year or 2 ago, and she's like, I am living the best year of my life at 73 years old. She's fabulous. I encourage everyone to go and follow her on Instagram. She's one of the most fabulous human beings. She's living her best life in her 70s. And I'm thinking, man, my best years are ahead of me. If May Musk is sitting here saying that I am living my best life in my 70s, how awesome is that to think like, oh, I'm just getting warmed up. I'm just getting started.
And if you think about it, the way that you should always look at life is like every year that you want to progress, right?
Yeah.
So every new year is going to be a better year than the last.
Yeah.
It's all about the perspective, how you're, approaching it, right?
Yeah. I mean, you brought up, everyone's working towards the goal and the financial goal and, the homes and the planes and all the things. And
Which that is all secondary stuff.
correct. Because at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, what am I doing all this for? What are we doing all this for? Why are we here today? It's because we want to have impact. We want to have impact. We do want to support a lifestyle. We do want the things. But if I get to the end goal, let's say my goal was some like 8-figure, 9-figure goal, okay, that I want to obtain at some point. And that's what I'm working for. I've seen a lot of people reach that 9-figure, 8-figure goal who, once they've gotten that financial number that they thought was their level of success, feel empty when they got it. And the reason why they felt empty when they got it is they didn't enjoy the journey there.
100%. And I actually want to touch on this because I feel that there's a lot of individuals who actually make it and then, they get there and they're just like, it's not what I wanted, right? And I think impact is a wrong word in my perspective, right? I think that ultimately you have to find something that brings you fulfillment. Yes, you're going to get a sense of fulfillment by, doing it for others and whatnot, helping other people progress. But at the end of the day, I think that fulfillment comes down to progression. Are you developing into a better person on a consistent basis? Are you actually staying intentional on a daily basis to go ahead and really live out the greatest version of yourself? And I think that's where progression comes from. Just seeing that daily progression is going to give you that sense of fulfillment, which is ultimately going to lead you into that fulfillment portion, and which is going to lead into happiness.
Well, who was it who said it? I think it was Les Brown who said, I hope it was him, who said that the definition of hell is on the last day of your life, you meet the person you could have become.
Oh, that's Les Brown, yeah.
Right? I'm telling you, that haunts me every day.
You don't live a life of regret.
No. Regret scares me more than failure. I'm okay with failure. I failed so many times. I welcome it because I would not be where I am today had I not learned the lessons that I had from those failures. Failure doesn't scare me at all.
Well, I think there's a preconceived notion behind failure that's misunderstood, right? I think at the end of the day, what most people think failure is like, okay, it didn't work out. No, failure is actually when you give up, right? Just
Yes,
like Thomas,
great point.
I think it's Thomas Edison who made the light bulb, right? They asked him, you tried 10,000 times to build a light bulb, you failed 10,000 times. And he said, no, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just found 10,000 ways of how not to build a light bulb. And I think that's ultimately the key, especially with entrepreneurship. It's just finding the routes of what didn't work so you know what doesn't work and you know what could potentially work.
100%. But don't you see with a lot of people that they're so afraid of failing, or like the public persona of them not fulfilling whatever they said that they're set out to do? And I always am like, people aren't watching you as closely as you think they are.
Everybody thinks the world revolves around them.
100%. No one's watching if that worked out for me, how much money I made from that. Like, nobody cares or knows. What they see is I'm doing and I'm trying again and again and again. Those are the people who people are watching and inspired and motivated by.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a little twist at you, all right?
Go for it.
So first things first, when it comes down to the whole fear of failure, once again, it's fear, false evidence appearing real, right? So the reason why I can back that up is because at the end of the day, the way that most people live is because there's a quote, and Jay Shetty actually quoted this off of a philosopher named Cooley. He says, "I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am." So we ultimately live in a perception of ourselves that we actually create ourselves based off of what we think people think of us, right? So when it comes to actually trying new things, and where there's that potential where we can go ahead and fail, quote unquote, fail or not succeed immediately, we're worried about what other people are going to think about us, and that's why we don't take action, because there's confusion rather than clarity. If there was clarity, we'd take action and we'd always be consistently getting results. But at the end of the day, it's just confidence. You have to breed confidence into yourself. What's the definition of confidence? The self-assurance and appreciation of one's own abilities and or qualities. So when you can appreciate your own abilities and or qualities, it's going to allow you to go out there every day, live to your full potential, because your full potential is your worth. So you need to utilize that full potential and go get what you're worth. And I feel like most people won't actually do that because they're in fear of their own perception of what they think people think about them.
That was good. You should host a podcast.
Oh, stop it. Don't make me blush. I'm messing. But, one thing I do want to touch upon, because I think that this is crucial. I think a lot of women entrepreneurs are actually scared to step out of their comfort zone. And I think that they feel like entrepreneurship is such a male-dominated space that they don't want to be judged by not only the males, but also by their own peers. So what are things that you utilize, yourself to overcome that fear of judgment, to really just go out there and be yourself and spread your message? Because your message is your message. What you go through is something that can resonate with other individuals. Most people aren't willing to put that out on the line.
Great point, and great question. I think for so long, women were taught and told and portrayed a certain way if they were being loud or they were being aggressive by just speaking up or having an opinion. And when you look at men who were doing the same thing, they were lauded as powerful and brilliant. And when women were speaking up and saying their opinions, it was like, oof, look at that aggressive bitch. And you
can curse on here, by the way.
Oh, that's right. I think I already did a few times. And I think the dialogue has started to shift. I've definitely noticed a shift. I've started giving zero fucks, and I don't know if it's because I turned 40.
And they came out.
I don't know if it's because I turned 40 and I just started not caring as much. Maybe I became more confident in what I was capable of doing, and I wanted to share that, inspire others to do the same and speak up and pursue their highest potential. Because as we were just saying, I would hate for anyone, man or woman, to live with regret of who they could have been. And I watch so many women diminish themselves and play small in their lives because I think that's what they're supposed to do. And it upsets me greatly. I watch it with my own friends, and I'm like, man, they were so capable, and they stopped. And why did they stop? And I think when more women become, and you don't even have to be a CEO or founder of a company to have an opinion, to speak out, to have a platform, social media, Instagram, Facebook, we're all given this amazing platform to speak our mind, to speak our voices. But I think the trick is, for me, and I'm only going to speak personally, is that I share my wins, and I share them confidently, and I don't find it as... But I was just going to say that. I share my wins because it's proof of execution of what I say I can do. And I think it's important for us to put it out there, because I don't want anyone questioning me or what I say I can do. Here you go. Here's proof, and that it's acknowledged and that it's received well. But I also share my losses. I share my tough times. I share when I'm insecure. I share when I have a moment of doubt. I don't have any shame in that. Just as I don't have any shame in sharing my wins, I don't have any shame in sharing my losses. And I think when you can do both in a safe place and not feel less than by sharing both or care about other people's opinions, then you have reached a level of confidence and within yourself that is pretty magical.
Mm-hmm. I think that's honestly a huge component of it, because at the end of the day, I think that most people are seeking external validations. That's why they just only promote wins, right? And, at the end of the day, you want somebody to resonate with you. And
100%.
when you have those losses, you're in a vulnerable place, right? And vulnerability, at the end of the day, comes down to emotions, right? And when you can bring that transparency to somebody, they can relate with that and see, hey, you know what? They're not perfect, but at the same time, they're human and they're still being able to progress, right? So now I could resonate with that. And that's how you really build an audience, by being authentic, real about the losses and, your journey. It's about the journey, not just the destination, the results, right? So, I think that, and I'm curious on your thoughts about this, because, for me, I'm very transparent. If you watch my stories, when I'm going through shit, I'll put it out there, because I know somebody else is going through it, and I want to be that person, that voice, because when I was at, a certain point in my life, where I wanted to commit suicide, I didn't think that there was anybody who really understood until, like, music was a big thing for me. I resonated with music so hard, because at the end of the day, there was a quote that really triggered me to really look at music, and it said, when you're happy, you enjoy the music. When you're sad, you understand the music.
Ooh, that's good. I do believe that music is the universal language.
100%, because it's emotion, right?
Yeah.
But I'm curious on your perspective on this. Do you think that women have a harder time, confronting, publicly to their vulnerabilities than men do? Or do you think men do? Because I can see it on both sides, but I'm curious.
I was about to say, I see it on both sides. I see men, just in general, struggle a lot with being vulnerable because of what they grew up seeing. Just as women didn't have a lot of certain role models, men didn't have a lot of vulnerable role models to look up to. You always had to be strong and have your armor on, and you don't show. Emotion was equated to weakness, which it's not.
Vulnerability is strength.
But women were often called crazy, or, if we get emotional or passionate, is like what I like to call it. I get passionate, okay?
Well, let's not, get crazy here. At some point, you guys do reach a level of craziness. I'm messing.
It's what makes us so fun to be around. But no, I think when there are female role models doing it, you doing it, we're starting to see these people that are successful, who have all the things that we aspire to be, are also going through those tough times, and they're willing to show it. There's another level of power that you have when you're able to be who you truly, truly are and show your authentic self. And I know authenticity is such like a buzzword right now. And it's like, no, I'm talking about like your real authentic self. And, as you do in your stories, I think Instagram stories is one of the best things that happened to social media, because it was no longer just focused on the perfect picture with the perfect filter, which I'm guilty of just as many others. But the stories, people were starting to show their day and what goes on behind the scenes. And to be honest, I get more interaction on those when I'm showing the behind the scenes, me with my hair in a towel wrap, you know what I mean, not done up, without my lashes on, without the filter on.
Well, I feel like people post that stuff too, like the whole stories, because they want to make it seem like a picture perfect life.
Oh, for sure. But you'll see, though, I'm seeing a huge change, especially because of the pandemic, where everyone got caught in Zoom at their home, in their non-perfect home, with their kids running around behind them, the wife screaming, the husband being like, be quiet, I'm on a Zoom too.
By the way, guys, if you ever see me on a Zoom call from the waist down, I'm naked. I'm just
100%. We all are. Let's be honest. We all are. It's a party. No, but we all were, it was business on the top, party on the bottom. And I think we were able to see again, these huge people, politicians, all these people are now in t-shirts. Yep. Their hair's not done. And we became more real to each other. And your kids would hop in your lap and be on the Zoom with you, right? You saw that different side of that person, and it now became okay. And I think that was a huge blessing. And again, I'm not going to say anything about the pandemic was a blessing, except for A, if you didn't take the time to work on yourself, and B, if you didn't let down the guard just a little bit and let people inside who you really are, your home, and what you're, the family man part that so many, I think, men and women were afraid to show.
100%. And no, I'm not talking bad about the pandemic or anything at all, but to tell you the truth, the pandemic helped me in my business. I started my business in March of 2020, right when the pandemic was starting. And I think that ultimately, just like you were saying, you had to take that time to really focus on yourself and really understand what you want to do and, try things out. And if you really look at history, at the end of the day, most businesses that really blow up started during like one of these pandemics or, rough times, economical crashes or whatnot. But for me personally, with my business, people were looking for answers because they were getting let off of work, and laid off. And at the end of the day, I was in life and business coaching, and it was just perfect timing.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious on your end, how does timing play a part in the things that really have catapult your success?
Well, I think what the pandemic showed is who's really a true entrepreneur and who's not, right? Because when things don't go your way, resilience is like the number one skill set needed to be an entrepreneur. You've got to be resilient. You've got to know that things are going to get shaken up and you're going to be like turned around and you're going to be like, okay, figure this out now. That's just part of the fun of it, if you want to call it fun. But yeah, I mean, I've had some major pivots I did not see coming besides the pandemic. You and I spoke about a project I was working on beforehand, which I thought was one thing. It turned out to be another. And it was a very lucrative project for me. And I thought it was going to be something I was going to be involved in for like a decade or two. I then realized real quick it was not what I thought it was, and I had to leave and start all over again because I had stopped everything I was doing prior to that for this one project. And I could have sat and been like, oh man, this is horrible. I'm now in a pandemic. I can't even film anymore like what I was doing. I can't travel. What am I going to do? And that's when I started my podcast because I'm like, all right.
Which I'm going to be on, right?
Yeah, of course.
I had to throw it out here so I could keep her accountable.
It's now on tape,
to it.
so I'm held to it, right? No, of course. But, and this is, again, the silver lining. And it's, I have these great connections with all these amazing people. I have an amazing network. I know a bunch of people with amazing stories to share. Okay, so I couldn't film them anymore, but now we have these wonderful podcasts that we can do from anywhere. And it was a fabulous pivot for me. The only regret I have is that I didn't start it sooner. I think, right? And so what I thought was like the end of a horrific, something bad, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to recover? It turned into something amazing and even better for me. And so now this past year and a half that I left that project and went back to doing, and filming and my series and doing the podcast, it's been the best year and a half ever. And it's what I should have always been doing. And so I do trust the timing. And even when you don't understand why things are happening or why a door closed or anything, I promise you, there is always something ahead. There's always a lesson learned from it that will help you to whatever is coming your way next.
And I think that's honestly something that most people don't really think about when they're going through it. Just continue going through the motions so that, through that consistent activity that you're applying, that you're ultimately going to reach somewhere where you have no idea where it's going to take you, right? I think that in the moment it doesn't seem like that because maybe you're not getting that instant gratification. I think that's a huge component of why people stop or why they fail early on, because they're looking because social media today, if you think about it, let's say for example you go on Tinder or Bumble, right? Swipe right, instant match, right?
Uber Eats, Amazon, everything is at your fingertips.
It's instant gratification, and I think most people are seeking that instant gratification rather than long-term gratification. And I always tell everybody, stop selling yourself short of long-term self-respect for short-term comfort, right? And I think everybody just wants it now. They think that they deserve it. They're entitled because of the way that social media and just even how we're raised. Look at it right now, like in elementary school, people are getting 8th place trophies.
Yeah, no, I wrote an article about that like a decade ago about don't give my kid a participation trophy, please. I want them to feel it. I want them to earn it. I want them to know what it feels like to earn something and it feel good about getting a ribbon or a trophy. It takes the joy away when you actually earn it, when everyone's given a trophy. Oh, it drives me crazy.
Because I think that ultimately, that also breeds confidence when you earn it, because at the end of the day, you're really evaluating what it really took for you to get there, right?
Absolutely.
I think that ultimately, like, turnkey businesses or just like, trophies for 8th place or whatnot. I don't want to, I respect the eighth place trophy person, but at the end of the day, go earn it. You know what I mean? But
I say all the time, it took me 20 years to be an overnight success.
Yep.
And I think
nobody sees what it actually takes. They only see the result.
No. And I think, going back to where you and I disagreed on, showing the planes and all this stuff, is because I think a lot of people equate that to like, oh, that was quick money that made it that. And I want to be like, no, there was so much work and that goes into that. That is not an instant gratification like he woke up this year and like was a millionaire. Like, there's so many years of hard work that go into that. And I just want that to be focused on as much as the reward.
And I think that also the audience takes that in the wrong perspective too, like the whole planes and yachts and things like that. At the end of the day, don't get me wrong too, it is marketing, flashy things create attention, attention creates revenue. Attention. But if I can create attention to ultimately get the true message out to you, then I've done my job. At the end of the day, the planes, watches, cars, things like that, it's for me because I've worked my ass off to get there. It's not for any flashy shit. I don't care if you like me, or not like me. I want to live a certain lifestyle and I worked for it. So before we end this, I'm curious, throughout your whole entire journey, divorce, building the podcast, building the brand, what do you think are the biggest lessons that you've learned through your life?
I battled an illness when I was younger, and for a small period, I was in and out of hospitals during my teen years, which is like the last years you want to be in and out of a hospital and left behind. But I learned, for a small period of time, I couldn't really move from the neck down, and I couldn't speak. And I learned, and I remember like laying in a chaise in my parents' room being like, please bring me through this, please bring me through this. I promise never to take one day for granted that I'm given. I have an attitude of gratitude every day that I wake up. I say, this is what I get to do today, instead, this is what I have to do today. And I think that has been a big game changer for me in my life, how I treat people, how I go through every day. I think it's super, super important that you have a grateful heart. And so I'm going to say that first.
100%. So Molly, if anybody wants to check out your podcast, anybody wants to watch your content, where can they find you?
I have a one-stop shop at mollydare.com where you can find all the things, all my filmed features, my podcast, my shop, everything is all on there.
So guys, this is not the last that you're going to see of her. So make sure to tune in, check out this podcast, check out all her content. And if you want to get in contact with her, where do they go?
mollydare.com, or you can find me on Instagram at mollydare, and there's an email link there.
You heard it here, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in.